Welcome, everybody. This is the December 20th, 2017 Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting. My name is Nick Christensen, City Attorney. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll determine that we do have a quorum. However, our chairman and our vice chairman are not present at tonight's meeting. We're still able to move forward, and we will do that by nominating an individual who will act as the chairman in the absence of the chairman and vice chairman who are not here. And in order to do that, I will invite a motion from one of the board members nominating another board member to serve in that role for this meeting.
I would like to nominate John Rutledge.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Mr. Rutledge, you'll act as the chairperson for this meeting. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So we're call the meeting to order, determining the quorum. We have enough for a quorum. So the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the February 24th, 2017 meeting.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any negatives? Any nays? No? All right, minutes approved. Then we're going to move on to new business. We have a fire sprinkler system variance. It's proposed new construction. It's going to be located at 443 Dick Buchanan Street, consisting of 10.1 acres owned by JJT Land Holdings. They're asking for a variance in the fire sprinkler system to be waived at this location. I guess at this time we'd like to invite Knox Auto Parts up and give us a kind of an idea of what we're looking at here.
Hello, my name is John Comperry. I'm the architect of record on this project. I've been working with them to get this building underway. This is an existing auto parts salvage yard, basically an automobile junkyard. And there are two buildings associated with this project. One is less than 5,000 square feet, so the sprinkler system does not kick in as a requirement on it. The other building is a 10,500 square foot shed, which is basically a pre-engineered building that has open on one side with walls on the other three sides that are metal. We're not going to have any heat in it. There's no plumbing in it, just lights. And it's to store engines and transmissions on pallet racks like you see at Kmart, I mean not Kmart, but Home Depot or Lowe's. So it'll be stacked 4 or 5 high in these racks. The fluids and everything will be drained out of it. Completely non-combustible racks, non-combustible building, non-combustible motors and transmission. So with the fact that we're not heating the building, the sprinkler system would be required to be a dry type system, so it wouldn't freeze in the wintertime and burst. So we're asking for relief, and also for the fact that it's going to be over $150,000 just to sprinkle the building, if we did sprinkle it. So that is the reason we're asking for relief from the requirement for the sprinkler system.
What about Randolph codes? You've got any input on this?
Just as Mr. Comperry mentioned, John, that Mr. Chairman, that it's, being that it is a greater than 5,000 square foot, our local ordinance would require it to be fire sprinkled. I don't think that the International Building Code, I have not seen any building plans. Let me say that, let me make that clear to everyone. I have not seen building plans. Therefore, I can't tell you what the construction type is to be used. If it's all, as he mentioned, non-combustible, I've not seen that. Based on his statement, if it were non-combustible, all metal construction, the building code, fire code would probably not require it to be fire sprinkled until it reached a threshold of 12,000 plus square feet.
Do you guys have building plans?
Yes.
I have seen a foundation plan and some elevations, and on none of their documentation that's been presented to me for review indicated in any way, shape, form, or fashion exactly what type of construction it was going to be. I just want to make that clear that, you know, whichever way the board decides to go with this, I want the applicant to know that it may in fact could be fire sprinkled depending on their type of construction if it does come to me with anything less than what they're indicating to us today.
What about the fire marshal? You got any input on this?
I would agree with Mr. Sawyers on this one. Having limited information on their plans, specifically more from a life safety standpoint, egress points, how many employees are going to be occupying this building at any given time, any type of machinery is going to be used inside of it, forklifts and such. I don't have anything in front of me to go any further. Now, from what I have found in the fire code, I would agree, from what I'm seeing, it looks to be 12,000 to 12,500 square foot before a building will need to be sprinkled according to International Fire Code. However, it also goes into storage and high pile storage, depending on how high the racks are going to be and so forth. So a lot of variables that could change in the event, depending on what this company decides to do with that building.
So do you guys have any more information that you can submit to the board? Maybe we need to revisit this a little bit more, so maybe these guys can revisit a little bit more to give us a little bit more of a clear definition of what we're looking at here.
Sure. Do your plans show that it's a steel building?
It calls out to be a pre-engineered, and it'd be like a pre-engineered metal building manufactured by Butler or Infinity or whoever they decide to get, but it'll be a pre-engineered actual metal frame, steel purlins, metal sheathing, wall panels and roof panels. I mean, that's what I've got called out on my drawings, so.
As far as occupied, people won't be working in the building like doing, you know, any type of jobs other than going in with a forklift, maybe retrieving an engine off the shelf, leaving with it. Someone may be coming in, putting one in that spot when they're done. It really is a glorified steel shed for engines, transmissions, and like he said, they'll be drained. We don't put them away with fluids in them. They're drained. So you got steel racking, steel engines, aluminum transmissions, and that's really the building's purpose, you know.
What are the engines and transmissions, what are they stacked on?
We do put them on a pallet, you know, it's on a pallet, and they're banded down with banding to keep them secure, and then they just get put on the shelf.
Are they,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask this gentleman please to state his name and address for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please?
I'm Joe Denton. I'm one of the owners. My brother here is Tom Denton, and my other brother Jim Denton. And what's that? Oh, I'm sorry. My home address, 11780 Couch Mill Road, Knoxville, Tennessee. I live in Knoxville. My brother Jim lives here in Nashville.
Thank you. Thank you.
and when you say clean, or you saying drained, are they clean or are they just drained?
No,
There's still remnants?
We don't clean them until you sell them, because if you do, you cause problems. You put water in places it shouldn't be, right? And then they sit on the shelf for a year, and they would, you know, be problems. But we drain, like an engine, you drain the oil out of them. Transmission, they drain them. So, you know, as much as you can. I'm not saying there's no residue, but they're basically, you know, as drained as well as you can drain them.
Another concern I had was the building is located 500 feet from the road, is that correct?
Pretty much.
Can anybody, maybe you guys can answer this, how far is the hydrant from this location? From this address, does anybody know? You guys know that by chance?
There is a hydrant on the street right in front of it, if I remember
I
correctly.
think there is. I don't know if I'll see it on this. Is it on this across the street?
I think the water line is actually across the road from it, and I think the fire hydrant is across the road.
Right across across the street.
Yep. Yeah, there it is. Would you like to see it? You probably know more about it than,
Yes, sir, if you don't mind.
this is the existing building, this is under 5,000 square foot, is 4,800 square foot building, and this is the 10,500. The fire hydrants are actually located right here at the corner of the building, across from there. So this is the water line on this side of it. So the property line here across from it. This is the road, this is Dickies Main Street here. So this is the property line.
How many square foot is, or how many feet is it from this hydrant point to this building right here? Do you know?
This is the half scale, so it's probably 60 feet per inch. So that's roughly 6 inches. So about, I think it's less than 500 to the actual back of the building.
Okay.
So, and like I said, the existing building that's already there is probably over the 10,000 square feet. I think it was built before.
Probably before the local ordinance required it to be fire sprinkled.
Right. And the other problem that we have with this site is that it's basically bedrock there. So getting a 6-inch line back there to the building is probably going to be more than the building itself costs, just to get the line underground.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. From a life safety standpoint, a lot of it, in my opinion, would depend on occupancy, how many employees are going to be in there, how often they're going to be in there, what type of storage, obviously. If you have all metal, it's a metal building, and you're going to have limited employees in and out of there, according to the International Fire Code, it would not be required to be sprinkled. So the only advice would be that, obviously the city ordinance states 5,000 square foot must be sprinkled. So I can tell you, according to fire code, I do not, and of course, we're in the International Fire Code of 2012 right now. It would not require it to be sprinkled if you went specifically off of the fire code.
That being said, if it was a metal building, is that what you're saying though, correct?
If it is a non-combustible metal construction, metal and steel construction, if it were otherwise, then yes, it would be required with what they're storing. A wood frame building obviously would require it to be fire sprinkled.
Okay.
I don't think we would be able to do a wood frame building unless we had the area increase because of the frontage to get it over the 10,000 square feet. I think it'd be, if I remember right, it's 6,000 square feet's allowable area for a wood frame.
We don't even want it.
Right. Yeah. But this is all going to be red iron steel and from a pre-engineered metal building.
Yeah, you and I have talked a number of times about this type of construction, and I'm all in agreement to the type of construction that it is. It's just you have to understand that there was nothing presented to me to indicate otherwise.
Right.
That the plan, obviously, I don't expect anyone's going to want to build a wood frame, trusses and the whole 9 yards, land beams,
Right.
and this, that, and the other for some 10,500 square foot building. So obviously, I'm pretty confident that it's going to be a metal steel frame construction.
What would
If it's
we
not-
need- What would we need to, get to just, make you feel comfortable that we're not gonna say we're building a steel building and then build a wood building?
I'm by the opinion, I take your word for it. We're all adults here and we're all trying to work toward one common goal.
As far
It's
as,
just that when if it come down to it and you were presenting to me a permit application with drawings that indicated otherwise, then that's where you would have your own problems would develop.
as far as the occupant load, the maximum occupant load based on 500 square feet per person is going to be 21 occupants, but there will never be 21 people in there, So the 5,000, the building that's less than 5,000 square feet is where the people are going to be working, taking the motors and transmissions out of the cars, and then they're going to be moving from there and storing them in this building. So basically, they're trying to get a space that's out of the weather and not necessarily out of the rain and not out of the cold, because the cold doesn't really affect the engine or the transmission. But the cold would affect by the fact we don't have any heat in there, we can't do a wet sprinkler system with water in there because it'll freeze and burst the pipe, and then we'll have water everywhere. So that's my main concern about putting a sprinkler system in this building, because there's no heat in it.
My question for the city attorney is, if we go off word and then they turn around and they build a metal building, what kind of action recourse does that pertain?
Well, one thing that you might want to consider is if the board is leaning towards granting this variance, is in your motion simply stating, just for the record, that the granting the variance is contingent upon the applicant's representation and follow through that they're going to build a non-combustible building.
Okay.
And so that way, at least if there's, later on, if they don't, Randolph is a
agree to
codes
that.
enforcement.
Well, there's a, I mean, on our permit application, there is a stipulation that requires it to either be marked sprinkled or non-sprinkled. And if I've got building plans that shows a wood frame construction and there's no sprinkle requirements been given at the same time, then they won't get their permit.
Okay.
Which means they can't even build it.
That helps. Good.
That would also apply to, in the event they ever change what they're going to be storing inside the building. This would be for your metal drained parts, engines. You know, if you ever decided to store any form of flammable liquids or any other thing that would be a portion of your process of breaking down them engines, then you're getting into a totally different realm of storage, and therefore the building could quite be possibly, you know, required to be sprinkled from that point.
Would it also change if they decided to do
If the
car
use
seats
changes, if
or-
the use changes, then the provisions that they've brought to us today would vanish.
Okay.
If the use changed from what they're intending today, as Mr. Brinkley indicated, that, you know, they're gonna enclose it now on that front side and start utilizing the building for purposes other than what they brought before this board today, then,
We'd have to do a change of use, you know,
right.
application.
Yes, sir.
We got any more questions from the board?
All my questions have been answered.
Are there inspections that are done on these buildings, this type of building?
We'll inspect it through the building process. Once we issue the certificate of occupancy, then at that point, the fire department would then conduct their quarterly, annually fire inspections. I mean, they would have eyes on it for the remainder of the time period that building is in use. Once we issue the certificate of occupancy, though, I mean, the codes department doesn't go back generally unless there's a need for some additional permitting or they're wanting to alter, modify the building in some way. Fire department,
We will conduct a yearly life safety, and also before the CO is granted as well, the fire inspector will come out and also conduct a life safety inspection, which would be, it'd be up to the NFPA 101 as far as your life safety, any emergency lighting, forms of egress and so forth. So fire extinguishers and so forth, because there will be stuff such of that will be required of this particular building that may not be necessarily an automatic suppression system, but manual as far as fire sprinklers, so forth throughout the building. So that will have to be conducted before, you know, Mr. Saunders would actually grant that final CO. Then, of course, our yearly life safety inspections or courtesy inspections that will be performed as well.
Any more questions from the board?
No, sir.
All right. So, looking for a motion to approve or to not deny the variance for 443 Dick Buchanan Street.
And we need to include the contingency in the motion, is that correct, sir?
It wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
With the contingency that their plans are as what they say they are, as a metal building.
That once they are submitted to codes for their permitting, that it, if anything is not as they have presented, that this variance
This variance is not,
null and void.
yes, that's correct.
I'll move to grant the variance contingent on the structure of the building being as presented and the use of the building as presented at this meeting tonight. Is that sufficient?
It is.
Thank you, sir.
We need a second.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, so 5-0, it's been approved for your variance.
Thank you very much.
All right,